Hi there. Do you identify with maybe being an empath? And that's the reason that you were scarfed up by a narcissist? A lot of victims do. I have. And I've always associated myself as that. I feel what other people feel. And it may be a really good target. My name is Tracy Malone, and today we're going to have a special guest. Leslie Miller is going to talk to us about what a highly sensitive person is. This is HSP, and it overlaps with the empath kind of qualities, and it makes people really vulnerable to narcissists because, again, if you're highly sensitive, have they called you, "You're too sensitive"? I know that's a narc line, but if we really are a sensitive person, we make really good abuse victims because they are going to tap into that vulnerability to make us feel the empathy for their drama story. And then we're going to end up hooked by a narcissist. So let's listen to what Leslie has to say. I know you're going to learn a lot. This is a great guest and a great topic. Narcissists and the highly sensitive person. Let's get started. Welcome, Leslie. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. We're going to talk about the highly sensitive person and the narcissist, but I would love it if you could tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm a therapist in the Boston area, and I specialize in narcissistic abuse, complex PTSD. I do work with a lot of clients who identify as highly sensitive people. I also work with anxiety disorders and, sort of some general challenges to well-being and health. So I also work as a coach, which allows me to work with people outside of my geographic area, which is an amazing thing. That's the one good thing about COVID is that we're all digital now and can be accessed really anywhere. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. That's why I brought you in. I saw an article on your website and went, wow, I've been meaning to talk about this for a long time. So many people that identify with being a victim of narcissistic abuse, like they kind of slap that I'm an empath, I'm a codependent. They're throwing things at themselves to go, that's like who I am and what made me vulnerable. But I think, for me, I know the highly sensitive person, when I read it, I was like, yep, I think that might be me. And I've been sticking that label of an empath because I do feel people's emotion. Can you define what is a highly sensitive person?
Absolutely. A highly sensitive person is someone who is able to really read the subtext in situations. They're not only sensitive to their internal states and their emotions, but to the external environment. And it's about 20% of the population who has this skill. And there's actually a real biological basis, a survival mechanism that a certain percentage of humans have the ability to have sort of this hyper awareness, which to be able to tune into your environment with such vividness and clarity is how we survive as a species. Not everyone identifies that way. If we were all that way, we would be pretty invincible as a species. But to live inside of a highly sensitive body, there's some challenges. You are more vulnerable to anxiety and emotional dysregulation, mainly because you just feel things so much more than someone who does not identify as an HSP or a highly sensitive person. It can be anything from noise and light sensitivity. Maybe you're a person who, when you're in a crowd, you're just really picking up on other people's energy. other people's facial expressions or their tonality, or things that are fairly imperceptible, but somehow you pick them up. A lot of people who are highly sensitive are very, very intuitive and have almost like an ability to be a little bit psychic. They're just really plugged. It's like plugging into an outlet, but you're getting like, you know, more voltage somehow out of an average situation.
Mm-hmm.
HSPs can be more fatigued from it. They need more processing time. Often they find they need more alone time because they're very deep thinkers. You know, it takes a lot of energy to if you're taking in more information, it makes sense that it's going to take more energy to process all of that. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's the difference between that and an empath? Because an empath feels the emotions of others. Is that similar, or is it more radiant? I'm hearing from you sort of like you pick up the energy in the room, but what's the difference between the two?
Right. It's a very, very subtle difference. An empath really takes on the feelings of other people and the experiences of other people as if they are their own. So while a highly sensitive person would naturally be tuned into others and have empathy, it doesn't necessarily mean that they absorb other people's stuff. Often they do. Often they do. Those two things seem to walk hand in hand very naturally. But an empath really takes it on as if it is their own. And not all HSPs do that. Some of them are able to, they have empathy, but and sensitivity, but they're not necessarily carrying somebody else's stuff.
Right. That makes so much sense. I know, again, this is in the let's figure out Tracy world, but so this week in Colorado, we had horrific fires. 1,000 homes were burned. And I could feel it. Like when I watch the stories on the news, I'm just like, I cry. Like it's sensitive, it's empathic. I know it's sort of like, I just get, if I go and watch America's Got Talent and I'm watching some little kid sing, I'm bawling. I didn't ever really know why. And it's weird. Is that part of how it feels?
It does. And I think because, again, it's a smaller percentage of the population that would identify this way. And, back when I was a kid, way back, we didn't have the language for, who's a highly sensitive person and who has empathy. It just, it just wasn't there. And in fact, you get the message that there's something wrong with that, that, toughen up. It might be something that you would hear, or why don't you have a thicker skin, or why is that bothering you, or the classic, oh, you're so sensitive, and it doesn't sound like a compliment.
Like, fix that. Stop being so sensitive. I heard that my whole life. And I'm sure that people can identify with this. That's why I brought you on, because being a highly sensitive person, it makes you much more vulnerable to narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, right? Can you define why our vulnerability is greater?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons for that. I think that, when we meet someone and fall in love and there's intensity and we're wired for intensity, that's a trouble spot right there. So that if, when we know that falling in love is largely a chemical thing. And if we're sensitized by our dopamine and our serotonin systems, then it makes it that much more potent. So those relationships that tend to move really quickly, like when we're talking about connecting to someone toxic, narcissistic, manipulative, maybe controlling, those types of personalities, they tend to move quickly to the attachment stage. And the attachment is where you know, that's sort of the blueprint for our histories. And then that starts getting all, you know, woven into the scenario and can spell trouble. I don't like anybody ever to come away from this understanding, though, and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm an empath, or I'm a highly sensitive person, so I'm going to be a target for a narcissist or a sociopath. That's really not what I'm saying. But we do have to be careful, because love can be very addictive, and relationships with these personalities are highly addictive. And when we're wired to be sensitized to stimuli and to really feel it, it's that much more potent, which makes it that much more painful. And I think if you're someone who has always felt different and felt like, hey, I was criticized for being a highly sensitive person, when your narcissist says, why are you being so sensitive? What does that do? You immediately step into this self-blame mode. Well, of course, that's always been my thing. I overanalyze. There really is nothing wrong here. This is just my, you know, and we're sort of off to the races, you know, or inside that wheel that never stops spinning.
Absolutely. And I think it also, it makes us more vulnerable, in my opinion. You can correct me, because we play into their victim role. Like, they tell us that story and we're already on board. And of course we want to help them. And, oh, you know, whatever it is that one of the ways that people can see, like, again, a narcissist tricks us into a fake persona. And if you're highly sensitive, they're giving you stuff that makes you have pity, or, you know, oh, let me help them. Is that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the manipulation piece that happens is absolutely plays out where the highly sensitive person, it does feel sorry for the narcissist, and that's what they want. They're looking for the hook. That's tremendous supply to someone who has a high number of narcissistic traits. It's you're feeling what I'm feeling. That's what they're looking for, a mirror. They're looking for you to reflect back exactly what they need in that moment. And you're supposed to be sort of a mind reader and read the tea leaves. And a highly sensitive person or an empath does that fairly naturally. It's a very fluid process. So, you know, feel bad for me when I need you to feel bad for me. Okay, well, that's, you know, it's like on demand.
It's like, sure, that's easy. What else you got? You know,
Right.
It's quite confusing if you think about it. But because we have this sensitive in the beginning, they love that you're sensitive, because you've tapped right into what they want. You have tapped in, you're a good supply. Yay, you've checked a couple boxes. You're empathetic. They need that you're a giver, they're a taker. It works out really well. But then the vulnerability comes, is that thing that you said a few minutes ago, is you're so sensitive. Now it's being used against you.
Right.
In the devalue stage.
Right. And this is where a lot of people, I mean, I have clients that really have a difficult time sort of acknowledging that they're highly sensitive. They see it as weak. They see it as vulnerable. They see it as a negative thing. And that has to come through conditioning, you know, in childhood. But I think society rewards people who are tough, right? You know, the tough and vulnerable seem to be what we want to see that somehow. We don't want to see people cry. And so I think that's, you know, part of why the struggle is that it's misunderstood. And it's only fairly recently that we have sort of the verbiage and a language to talk about what is it like to be somebody who perceives a lot. It's actually a beautiful thing. And it's a superpower. But people have to learn how to cultivate, you know, how do I use this for me and not against me, right? and how do I learn to really use this as a superpower versus, you know, allowing myself to be a target by anyone?
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Like you were talking, and I wrote down a note. What's the percentage of men and women? Because we have men watching. Is it mostly women? Because again, women get that label. You're so sensitive. And we go off and we're like, okay, we're sensitive. Or we get called it a lot. And I know there's sensitive men. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm saying, is there like some kind of data that says men and women?
I think that is a great question. And I was thinking about that before you and I connected to this call, because there really isn't good data out there on this. And we definitely tend to think about highly sensitive people as female people.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to think that, you know, because it's early conditioning, if parents are trying to condition sensitivity out of the child and the child is male, what does that look like? If maleness, crying is weakness, feelings may be interpreted as weakness. What happens to a male who has this really beautiful trait, right? They're just, this is their natural state of authentic self, but they're told it's wrong. I suspect that in an effort to you know, toughen up a boy or to cultivate maleness, some real damage gets done to that authentic self who does have sensitivity, because it's deemed as weak or wrong.
Absolutely. And again, we look at the stereotype of male and female, right? Without anything in the middle, because we know there's a middle now, right? But when we look at that, just the stereotype, as you were saying, if you're a boy and you're growing up, you know, the toughen up message is given to both a male and a female when they're growing up. But the male has this like added layer of burden that they have to foot into that male role, whereas the woman can just go along in life going, yeah, she's too sensitive. Yeah. I mean, it's almost, I don't know if it's gender, but it just feels like for you and I, we both treat male victims of narcissistic abuse. And you know, many of them, I think, are very sensitive and loving. And that's what kind of got them into this mess. But I just think that we should make sure that everyone knows. And how would someone check if they were?
I think that, you know, there's good information out there now to do sort of like the checklist, you know, how am I in crowds, or, you know, what happens when I'm in a lot of noise, and do I get panicky, or is it just really intense for me, or do I feel what others feel? You know, do I have sensitivity to light or food or tactile sensitivity?
Okay.
You know, all of those things can be part of that. But just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying about, you know, men in our culture, you know, I wonder if, you know, that through this kind of conditioning, you take sort of the sensitive soul, you know, and try to make them into somebody else. It's a formula to actually promote violence, you know, to kind of to push somebody to go pretty far in the other direction. And certainly, you know, substance abuse, you know, it's like, well, if I can't be my authentic self when I'm in my sober mind, let's see what happens when I just numb all my natural tendencies. So I think by trying to condition this quality out of somebody, it's incredibly harmful.
I would imagine that. So like, yeah, well, my question goes into sort of the strategy for, you know, a highly sensitive person to protect themselves against abusive relationships or leave one, right? If you don't even know you're this, but you're sort of a target, and many, as you know, victims are repeat offenders. Like it's just a different flavor that comes along next, and we're targeted again. How do they protect themselves?
One of the things I like to do with my clients is have them really do sort of an inventory of what they experience in their body. So when you're an HSP, you have a lot of good information that, geez, when I'm around this specific person, I get really tight in my shoulders, or I feel like I have a sort of a headaches coming on as soon as that conversation is over, or I feel exhausted after that conversation with anytime I'm around that person. Or in a relationship, I don't know why, but I've started to feel a little bit sick to my stomach when I hear, X hand on the doorknob, because I don't know what kind of mood they're going to be in. Or, so what's happening in your body when you are around certain people? How fatigued are you? What kind of somatic responses are going on? And how do you use that and really cultivate your emotional intelligence to get you to a place where you just trust it? It's like another level of intelligence that doesn't require a lot of thought. It's like, I just know that when I have these somatic responses, I need to pay attention. I need to hit the pause button, and I need to validate it for myself. Mm-hmm. And when people do that, they begin to realize how damaging certain relationships really are. It's like somebody who's chronically nauseous, chronically anxious, starting to get things like, just various aches and pains in their body, and needing to be in bed for a weekend, but they don't know why. Mm-hmm. It's like, what's happening there? And can you pay attention to that and understand that who you are around may really be making you physically unwell? Mm-hmm. And at the first signs of that, protecting yourself. I mean, often people come to us after they're very deep in the bad situation, and that's fine. It happens. But using that information, that when I'm in this conversation that I know isn't going to go anywhere, that it's designed to just bring me around and spin me around, that it's okay to pull yourself out, protect yourself, and begin to use your physical well-being as sort of the barometer for what's happening.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And it's really exactly what we tell our clients all the time, right? I think that people should get in line with when these feelings come. Okay, I recognize I get nauseous, or I get really just whatever you're feeling when you're with this person. And as you were talking, I kept thinking of people with narcissistic parents, right? When they go back to the parents, they just feel terrible. And they might not have even done anything yet, but they just have that cloud, black cloud syndrome just over their head of, the doom of what's happening. But I think journaling about it is going to help them a lot. When I got back from mom's, I felt this way. And then next time you see mom, go back and document it again and be like, yeah, every time I see mom, I feel this. Did she do anything yet? No, but it was just this cloud. Start to really not ignore it and document it in your own way, so that you start to see the patterns. Because often, like that initial boom hits you, and then like, all right, we just excuse it. Oh, it's just them, and we ignore it. If you're feeling that, don't forget, if you're going to a therapist and a coach, talk to them about it. But if you're not, start to journal it, start to write down those feelings, those people, and then you'll start to see the patterns and go, okay, I can't ignore this any longer.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think having a support person too is huge. It's huge. Self-care for an HSP or an empathic person, it's critical. And, when you're in a negative, toxic relationship, whether it's family members or a significant other, it takes you pretty far away from your own needs.
Yes. And again, downtime is, walking, getting out and sort of like getting out of your head. If this is really, enveloping you, that, you're feeling this way. And, do they go under the covers a lot and just be like, I don't want to see the world today. I could see that as a highly sensitive person who's in overload.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, certainly. It's so easy to become overloaded and overwhelmed. And toxic relationships really require that. That's sort of like your general admission ticket in that relationship. It's not even a front row. It's just the ticket to get in, right?
Yeah. And when they're in this narcissistic relationship, it's so contrary to what they feel. And, again, they're hooked into it with the love bombing and the happiness in the beginning. But then as things change, that's when they'll start to see that, like, okay, this isn't the good feeling that was yesterday or last week. And they'll start to see it. So, the immediate kind of reaction, expect it a little bit later, and don't be shocked if you are identifying with a highly sensitive person role. Then you are like, okay, let me just wind it back and see, like, is this normal? Is this just a one-time thing, or do they continue? Again, the documentation of that relationship is going to help you go, oh yeah, this is getting worse, or whatever it's the status is.
Right.
Yeah. Now, you talked about it being a superpower. I really want to have like a little more information on that, because it's a way forward, right? What's the good part about being highly sensitive?
Well, I think, what an amazing skill it is to be able to hear subtext, hear what other people don't hear, see what other people don't see. I mean, when we're kids, we're like, I wish I could be invisible, or I wish I could fly, or I wish. That's like, okay, so this is a skill that gives you a lot of data and a lot of information. And what better thing is there than information that we can use to our benefit. Mm-hmm. And when you learn to trust it, when you learn to trust and validate your physical responses to things, validate your own experiences, stop questioning, am I crazy? Is it me? No, you're not. No, you're not crazy. No, it isn't you. When you let go of that and just really trust your own experience, really good things start to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's that ability to reparent ourselves and use information as a way to empower our choices. Mm-hmm. The way forward is always with ourselves. It's not changing and helping the people around us. I mean, if we can, beautiful. If we can't, okay. But, Tracy, you know better than anybody. You can't change somebody who's a controlling, narcissistically inclined individual. It just doesn't happen. It's highly unlikely. So for anyone to pour their heart and soul into fixing that, there's no way forward. But what you can do is pour your heart and soul into preserving yourself, protecting yourself, building yourself back up so that it doesn't happen again. And if you're going through, a divorce or something like that, you're doing it with a lot more clarity. Then I listened to your, I think it was an Instagram recently, where you're just talking about the whole divorcing a narcissist issue and, having a goal and having a plan. I that's so on target. And I think that you can't really get there unless you're really getting next to yourself, your own issues and your own stuff. Mm-hmm. We're always wondering what that person's going to do next, and always, in that headspace, you never get to the place of what are my own goals.
Right. Absolutely. That's such an important part in the divorcing process, because we generally just get into it and there's no time to think about it. And then we just get like rolled over and you end up not where you wanted to be. So yeah, especially when you are a highly sensitive or an empathic person, the whole process just exhausts you. I mean, it's the betrayal of the person you thought you were with and so much more that goes into it. So that has to affect a highly sensitive person even more to find out their entire life is a lie.
Exactly.
Yeah. Not easy. There's no other words for that. So did I?
That about sums it up.
Is there anything that I've missed that you wanted to tell the people here today? Did I forget anything?
Not at all. I would just say that for anyone who thinks they might be highly sensitive and they for sure know that they're high on the, they have a high level of empathy and they feel really tired and maybe they're feeling, disconnected from themselves, I would just really encourage that person to get into therapy or coaching, start to get some help around that issue, start to think about self-care. But above all, it's really important to flip around any negative connotations about being highly sensitive. It's a marvelous quality. It's truly a superpower. And when people see it that way, things improve. So
thank you so much for that. Can you just give me now, last question, how can people find you?
Yeah, my website is the easiest way to find me. It's just my name. It's Leslie Miller, LICSW.com. There's a link to click on request a 15-minute free consultation. So if you want to just have a quick conversation about services or what's happening in your life, please click on and we'll see if we're a good fit. And if we'll go from there.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been so informative and I know it's going to help so many people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Didn't I tell you that would be a great interview? I know that a lot of you are going to relate to this. And as Leslie said, I suggest that you go out and look for some more information on this. Look for a highly sensitive person checklist. I bet there's one on Pinterest. They're everywhere. So just Google it and find out and start to see the differences between the empath and the highly sensitive person. Does it help to have a label? No, but it helps to understand. When I tell my son, oh God, there's a fire in town, or, oh, this just happened, a shooting in our town, right? I am like as if it happened to me. When I watch the families on TV of these tragedies, I am brought to tears. I just feel it and I can't even get it out without that I'm gonna cry in my voice. It's definitely way over the top and I wanted a better explanation. So I hope this helped you. Please visit me at my website, narcissistabusesupport.com. We've got so many resources for you if you are going through narcissistic abuse, from free ebooks to checklists and all kinds of other things. So make sure you stop by. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much. If you're not, please hit that little subscribe button and the little notification button, and you'll find out when I do my next interview and we'll get you healed. So thank you so much and I'll see you soon.